Motorsports. Joining us here on the phone lines is a gentleman who has certainly had his time driving well more than 55 miles an hour in the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and I know he's doing some other stuff now, which I'm looking forward to talking to him about. We are joined on the phone lines by Derrike Cope. Derrike, pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's jump right into things. We've got Chad and Sully here, and I'm going to let Chad take the first question.
How you doing, Derrike? So
I'm doing well.
All right, so my first question is for you. In your own words, who is Derrike Cope?
Who is Derrike Cope? Well, I think he's just a passionate race car driver who's had a great opportunity and great people to work with and has had some modest success.
Well, Derrike, this is Sully from NASCAR, and we'd like to ask you, let's talk about your start in the Cup Series and what it was like with Jefferson Motorsports.
Really, in the early stages of my career, George Jefferson and Jefferson Racing was, a standout organization on the West Coast and was only Ford at that time. And really, I had great people to work with there, and Jackie Johnson was crew chief who had actually worked for Bud Moore and Joe Fazan, a bunch of people in the Grand National Series, and we had a lot of success. Won championships and won Rookie of the Year in the Winston West Series. Ran my first Cup race in 1982 at Riverside, and then continued from there. So, yeah, it was great, a great start, and really was the foundation for myself to to get an opportunity to move forward and try to become a stable fixture in NASCAR Winston Cup racing.
Now, to segue a little bit here for a second, you mentioned a track that obviously is no more in Riverside, and you've got some tracks that are coming back to the circuit possibly over the next couple of years. What does that, kind of mean to you? What is seeing some of these tracks come back to life mean to you and maybe mean to the sport?
Well, I'm hopeful for it. I certainly was, sad that some of those racetracks, ended up not being taken off the schedule. Rockingham was a great racetrack, a demanding racetrack. Wilkesboro was very difficult and, a great place where, it was in the heart of Wilkesboro and, the heart of where, Grand National racing really started. I think, anytime that we lose a racetrack like that in its history, which, I'm a traditionalist, so I guess having those come back to the schedule, at least be, brought back to some sense of life, and hopefully we'll be able to find some opportunities to race there again. And I'm glad to see it. I think that it's a disservice to the young guys that are coming up now not to have an opportunity to race on those tracks.
Absolutely. 1989 brought you to Whitcomb Racing, and 1990 saw two wins. The first coming in the Daytona 500 as heartbreak struck for Dale Earnhardt when he cut a tire. Tell us what you remember about your first win and what you remember from the 1990 Daytona 500.
I remember a lot, actually. It was really embedded in my mind, and, we had a lot of exciting things that, were transpiring and happening through the wintertime leading up to that, and a lot of effort went in, and we really felt like that we had a really good race car, and it really proved out when we were down there in practice and qualifying, and then we got to be in the races themselves, and you could tell the car had a lot of speed. It was a loose race car because it was very aerodynamic. It was trimmed out. It was not the easiest car to drive, but it was fast. So I knew going in that if I could just, draw from what little experience I had and just keep the car out of harm's way and be there at the end, really that was the game plan that Buddy Parrott came up with. And we were able to facilitate that. And everything worked out as Buddy said that it would. We would have a late opportunity, to get a shot at them. And from that point, I remember, it was flat out at the end, and I was on used tires, and Earnhardt and all those other guys had new tires, and we were right there with them, tooth and nail, and it just went our way. And we were very fortunate to get our first win and to win the Daytona 500, which, not a lot of people that, did well in the sport have that, in their notch belt.
Well, you had a second win at Dover. Can you tell us what that was and what it meant to you?
The race at Dover really was, I think solidified the fact, that we were not a one-hit wonder and that we could win. And Dover is a very demanding racetrack, both physically and demanding on the race car itself. And I knew that all of our guys, we had heard the word fluke, and we had knew that, people were not really giving us a great deal of credit, and we were adamant that we would win again, and that we were, not going to give in. And we didn't have a lot of funding, but we had, the capabilities to run the Hendrick motors at maybe 10 races, and then we had to run ours at the others. So, people don't really know the real inner workings of what we had and what we didn't have at the time. But we went up there, and the car itself was wicked fast, and we were, in a position to, run up. We were running up front all day long, and they run me out of gas. And I had to come down pit road and almost lost a lap. Didn't lose a lap, but our pit crew was really great, and Buddy Parrott was on the crew himself and got me out just in front of the leaders, and I raced my way around and got back up into the top 10 somewhere, and really was in a position for the caution to come out and put us back on in a position where we could get up front. And from that point there, I was on kill, and I ran everybody down. I think Rusty was out there by, about a straightaway, and I ran him down, and then just drove away. And it was really, I think just one of those races that you proved that on probably one of the most difficult racetracks to run 500 laps on, we proved that we could win races against the best, and that we were forced to be reckoned with.
1993 led you to Kill Yarborough Racing, and in 1994 you began running for Bobby Allison, getting a win in the Busch Series at New Hampshire. What did it mean to run for those two legendary driver owners? And as owners, what were some of the similarities and differences between the two of them?
Yeah, for me, I had respect for both men. I had a better relationship with Bobby, because Bobby had actually came out and drove my car on the West Coast, and I had a great rapport with Bobby. Cale, Cale was more hands off, and really, I liked Cale. I think Cale, he just didn't really have the ability or wouldn't spend the money to, let the organization, flourish. And we ran on minimal amounts of money, and really just didn't have the equipment to really showcase the potential of the people we had there. And, it was disappointing, actually. But I think when I went to Bobby's, it was probably the best decision that I had made, and really one of the poorest decisions on my part to leave at some point. So, and there's a lot of underlining things that, facilitated that, but it always comes down to funding. You don't have enough money to do what you need to do. But Jimmy Fennig, myself, and Keith Allman, and everybody that was at that organization, we just gelled. And we had Steve Levitt building the chassis, who really came from Hendricks, and then would go on to Bahari, where I went there. But we did everything in-house. We really were very productive, had a lot of outside polls, just never could pull the race win off. We ended up second at Phoenix, but was really in a position to be in the top 10 in points that year, and we had some engine failures that took us out of it. But probably the most productive race team that I really had the opportunity to race for week in and week out, and just a talented group.
Let's talk a little bit about that Busch Series win in New Hampshire. What do you remember about that day?
The Busch Series, racing, I never really wanted to do a lot of Busch Series racing. I felt like that I had worked so hard to get to the Cup Series, and I had ran, the Winston West Series, and I ran, whatever I could, late model sportsmen's out there to get to Cup. So I really didn't have the intent on, running a lot of Busch Series races, but when Davey Allison was killed, he was in the, and Red Farmer was in the helicopter when he passed away at Talladega and had the crash. But Red was crew chiefing a Busch Grand Nationals team that was all of Johnny of Allison's childhood friends from Hueytown. And Davey, they never won anything, but Ron Zook owned the team. And after Davey was killed, and I was driving for Bobby, they had a kid driving the car, and they wrecked at Bristol, broke his leg. And so Red and Bobby asked me if I would fill in and drive the car at Bristol for them, and I did. And we finished, I think, 7th. and really had a good effort. And then they asked me to go to New Hampshire, which would be my third ever bush race. And we went to New Hampshire and won the race. And it was exciting because, all of those guys, they were all the childhood friends of Davies, and they'd never won. And Red was, ecstatic, and I got to know Red really well. And it was really a great relationship. They were great guys. We had a great little race team there. Ernie Elliott was doing the engines. And that rest of that year, we were tough and should have won several other races. I mean, we sat on the pole by a mile. I was wide open with the Busch car, which was unheard of then at Michigan, and had a problem in the race. But, really it was just a fun year to run that car with them. And then, the owner had some financial difficulties and the thing disbanded. But that was really my really only real quality Busch Series ride, really.
In the mid-2000s, you also became a team owner. Tell us about your time as an Xfinity Series owner and then a Cup Series owner.
The ownership roles were really, I think, facilitated because of the lack of opportunity. In the sport, you really can fall out of favor, and rather quickly. And I just never really got, a premier ride. I was always, coming to teams that, were, having problems. Crew chiefs were leaving, or, they were running out of money, or going to close the doors, wanting to sell. And so it just seemed like that I just never really had the opportunity to get into a quality ride after I was, really at Bobby Allison's. And just, I think when you don't have the opportunities, you have to try to, find a way to still be involved. And I think, not that I wanted to be an owner, but, I really felt like I needed to, control my own destiny and at least try to be seen. And, in this sport, it really is out of sight, out of mind. So it really was kind of just, it was just necessary to try to find a way to keep racing. So that's how it started. And, obviously I was fortunate enough to have some relationships, put some sponsorship together with Friendly's Ice Cream, and John Walters helped me put that deal together. And, we ran our own Cup deal that year with my cousin Ernie, who now runs JTG and was with Kevin Harvick, and a lot of success there. And, we did all we could and just didn't have a great deal of money. And, we just ran a lean program, and just seemed like you just never had the opportunity really to put a quality deal together. You're always just having to, take enough money that you can run 10 or 15 races on and try to run the whole deal. And so we just did the best we could. That's been really what my career has been about, just trying to reinvent yourself, trying to stay out there and do what you love to do. And, I don't really have a lot of regrets. I've enjoyed every opportunity.
Okay, and your last Cup Series race came in 2021 at the Daytona 500 after 3 years out of the car. It was a short one, but I'm sure it was a good closing chapter. Starcom shut down in 2021. What have you been up to since in the last few years?
Well, that was a great run with Starcom Racing. They were, they went way back to the Bobby Allison deals with Mane and Tail Shampoo, and they were, they gave me the opportunity to run my final Daytona 500. It just seemed like that I was supposed to drive that car, but they started realizing how much money it took, and we just had to put funded drivers in the car, and that ended up how that program went. But I did get my opportunity to go to Daytona, for one last time with Starcom, and we had a good race car, and I felt really good about the event. And I lost the right front tire like on lap 3 going in turn 3, and the thing just went up in the fence, and that was it. So it was disappointing, and not what you really had hoped for. Just really wanted to run the entire race and enjoy it. But that's the way racing is. And
yes,
I've had good success at Daytona. I've enjoyed it there, and it was just not the way I wanted to end it, but it was still an opportunity to go back to Daytona one last time and end it there. So, but from there, with Starcom, we closed the door. We sold the team to Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin and the charter as well. And my wife and I, we're now doing a podcast called Race Theory. That's something that we've started this year. We're in the infancy of that, and just starting to grow that and having some enjoyment with that. And I'm working with my cousin, Nick Tucker, who, has a Trans Am team. and we're doing some Trans Am TA2 racing, and I've got a TA car, run a few races with it, and so we're just enjoying racing, maybe in a different vein in road racing, but enjoying it. And that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're just mentoring some kids. We had a lot of success last year with Brent Cruz, a 14-year-old kid who won 3 races and some poles, and just a good fun year in a different different capacity. And so working on the cars, and I get to look at the kids, do some mentoring, do some coaching, and it's been fun. And my wife and I get to travel the races still, and so we're still enjoying ourselves.
Okay, there's a new series around called SRX. Is that something that you would be interested in working with Tony Stewart and Ray Heffernan?
I've never been approached by them. I really don't know what their program is. I know that Ashley, she's our data acquisition. She does a lot of our analysis and stuff, and she works for them as well. And so I've paid attention to what they've done. I know Ray and Tony, obviously, and I know some of the guys that are crewing and working on the cars and stuff. So I enjoy watching the races. If there was ever an opportunity, I would certainly consider it, but it's not something that that I I'm just wanting to jump into and do. It's not really something that doesn't really interest me to a great degree.
I got you. You got one more question there, Chad?
Yeah, us being from New England, modified racing is big up here at Stafford and stuff. Would you ever be interested in being in a modified race, like, the Spring Sizzler or something?
Certainly I would. Obviously, Bob Whitcomb and Greg Whitcomb, they have a series, I think, at Monadnock, and they do some things there, and I've sponsored some laps there and some things. And, I obviously I've actually had my own shock observer company, so I did a bunch of shocks for some modified drivers and things, and I've always enjoyed those races. I've driven super modifieds on the West Coast on asphalt, so if the opportunity ever came about, I certainly would look at it. I've driven GTP cars at Daytona in 24 hours, and Ferraris and open cockpit Lolas, and so I've driven about everything except Indy cars. So I'm sure that I probably have a lot of fun in doing it, and I love watching the event. So I would relish the opportunity.
So we have been speaking with Derrike Cope, winner of the 1990 Daytona 500, and really all-around cool guy. Great story from you, Derrike. And this question is one we ask everybody going forward here on this show. When the time finally comes and your chapter is up, as they call it, how do you want Derrike Cope? How do you want to be remembered by the race fans?
Yeah, I think just an approachable, passionate guy. I think that's what all I ever strive to be. I loved racing to the fullest degree of the word, and I'm passionate about it. Always have been, and I wanted to be approachable and make sure that that every fan left with a story. And I think if that's what I think, if anybody that met me, that's probably what they took away from it. And I would hope that that's what my legacy would have been.
Excellent. Derrike, much appreciated joining us here on Myles on Motorsports tonight.
Yes, thank you very much, Derrike.
Yes, thank you for everything, Derrike.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Hope to cross paths with you at a racetrack here or there, and hopefully very soon. So Derrike Cope here on the Inside the Turn interview, and be back with more on Myles on Motorsports.